Hello, and welcome to the second virtual IFAR evening hosted by IFAR, the International Foundation for Art Research. I am Sharon Fleischer, Executive Director. As I explained at our very first virtual IFAR evening last month, which was on the great Italian Renaissance artist Raphael, IFAR, a nonprofit educational and research organization dedicated to integrity in the visual arts, has organized many interesting, important, and popular programs over the years. Over its 50 years, we are in fact 50 years old. This past year, we've just been celebrating our anniversary. This program will not be an exception. Until this summer, all our programs have been in person, and virtually all of them have been sold out. But we are headquartered in New York, where of course the pandemic has reaped much hardship, and it has certainly also put a damper on our in-person programming, so we have transitioned to virtual programming for the near future. We look forward to the day when we can welcome all of you back in person at our programs and mingle with you at our reception. Virtual programming, as I said last time, does have an advantage. It's given us the chance to welcome more of you and from greater distance. Today, we even have someone from Australia who has long distance honors today. I know that many of you are new to IFAR, and I hope you'll take the time to learn more about us. Please visit our website, ifar.org, and check out our unique educational resources, including our Catalogs Race and Aid database, our Art Law and Cultural Property database, our Provenance Guide, our Authentication in Provenance Research Services, our public program information, and our publications, especially our award-winning IFAR Journal. And if you're so inclined, I hope you'll decide to subscribe to the journal, or better yet, become an IFAR supporter member. We can certainly use that support. We always can, but particularly now, like many nonprofits, we are facing a very challenging time. As many of you know, IFAR has a long and pioneering history dealing with art theft. In the 1970s, we created what became the first clearinghouse for stolen art, later a database, that was accessible to the public. If there's time, we'll come back to that later in the Q&A discussion period. Over the years, we've hosted many programs dealing with art thefts and the many aspects of it, both panels and individual talks. And we've also hosted programs on the related but technically very different subjects of which we won't cover today, namely art looting, restitution, and repatriation. Tonight, we're continuing in that tradition with a very special speaker, John Barelli, who until his retirement in 2016 was the Chief Security Officer at the Metropolitan Museum of Art here in New York. He spent almost 40 years at the Met, 30 of which, in that security department, 30 of which were as the Chief Security Officer. Last year, he published a book called, appropriately enough, Stealing the Show, A History of Art Crime in 6 Thefts. Here's the book cover, which describes some of his experiences at the Met, the types of thieves he encountered, and thefts, and the way security changed over the years. It's a good read, so you may want to get hold of it. John Barelli, who's officially Dr. Barelli, as he earned his PhD at Fordham with a dissertation titled, quote, The Understanding of the Business of Art and Antique Theft, will speak for about 30 minutes intentionally shorter than our talk last time so that we can open the program sooner to discussion and Q&A, both my questions and yours. Although we won't address your questions until after the talk, feel free to submit them at any time during the program. There's a Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you can't immediately see it, just hover your cursor over the bottom of your screen and you will see it. Write your questions down, and as I said, we will get to them after the talk. Please note that only we on our end can see those questions beforehand. Your fellow audience members will not be able to see them. We will get to as many of the questions as we can. So without any further delay, I very proudly present John Barelli.
Thank you, Sharon. I want to thank everybody for viewing in, and I want to thank you for having me. This is a really exciting evening that I could share with you. If you could just put up one slide for me. So there it is, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I arrived there in 1978 as an assistant security manager. It's an imposing structure. It's over 2.2 million square feet with 21 interconnecting buildings. It runs from 79th Street all the way to 84th Street to 80th Street. It covers 12 acres. There's 17 different curatorial departments, 5 conservation departments, and it's considered one of the greatest encyclopedic museums in the world. And one curator told me encyclopedic means any art or all art from prehistoric all the way to contemporary and modern. So it covers the whole gamut of art civilization. What I'd like to do tonight is cover 5 different thefts that occurred at the Met over my career. Most of them in the late 70s, early 80s. And with that, I'd like to show you how security progressed over the years, over my 30-year career to present day. I did a lot of studying about art theft, and I came up with the premise that art theft is a crime of opportunity. It really is. And I've divided it into 3 different groups. There's the internal individual or opportunist who works in an organization, a museum, a gallery, a residence, and they wait for an opportunity to steal something. They usually have a problem, almost like the embezzlement type of situation where a person has a need for money, whether it's a gambling problem, drugs, divorce, or something that really triggers the person to commit this crime. It's a very hard individual to guard against because they know the operation, they know the building, they know the operation. So it's very, very difficult to guard against. The next opportunist is the external. He or she is the individual who comes into an organization or a museum, most likely a visitor, somebody from the outside who sees some type of opportunity, spur of the moment. There may be a little planning. Here again, it depends on the individual's mentality, if it's for economic value or just a prank or just because they like to steal things. The third is the professional opportunist, and that's the individual who we feel plans an operation. They see some weakness They plan for it. They usually want to do the theft for economic value or economic gain. They have a plan to not only steal, but sell and fence the object in the legal or legal markets. So what I'm going to do now is I'd like to start the show, and we'll go to the next slide. And this is a head of a herm, Greek 5th century BC. It was a marble head about the size of a bowling ball, weighed about 20 pounds. It was brought into the collection, purchased, I think, in 1959. And in 1979, it left the collection. An individual came into the museum, saw an opportunity to steal this bust, and he just picked it up, either put it under his jacket or we surmise maybe in a bag. And our herm left the museum for about 5 days. In the early days, museums had a really hard time in dealing with theft. This piece was the first theft at the Met in over 107 years from a public gallery. There was never a theft. It was very hard to react to it. We didn't really know what to do. Museums in the early days did not want to go to the press. They felt embarrassed. But the executives at the Met knew if we wanted to get the piece back, we had to get the word out to the media. And the next day, it was on front page of the New York Times, which we really believe helped get the piece back. Excuse me. 5 days later, a call went into 30 Rock Center to a security officer. Someone in on the other end said that you could retrieve the head that was stolen at the Met in a locker in Grand Central Station. He called the police. 2 detectives went over, got the head. They called us. We went down to the Manhattan North, and we were able to retrieve the head. I looked as I was inspecting the head to verify it was the head. I looked at the forehead, and if you could look at the forehead, when the piece was brought into the Met collection in 1959, there was a heart over the right eye. And when I looked at the other side of the forehead, there was another heart carved in the forehead, and it was new. We surmised that this was not only a theft of opportunity, but it was a prank, or someone wanted this to give to a gift, because when we recovered it, it was on Valentine's Day. So either the person was going to give it to a friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, we don't know, but we retrieved it, and we were happy to get it back. And as we investigated these art thefts, very interesting when you investigate an art theft, it's probably the only crime that you really feel, well, you'd like to make an arrest and see who did it. But the major focus in an art theft is retrieving the art. And we were very happy to get it back. It's in the galleries now. I believe it's in Gallery 127 on the first floor of the Greek and Roman galleries. It was our first experience, with a theft. I must note that in the gallery, there were no cameras at that time in 1979. Cameras were non-existent. The alarm systems were very primitive. We had no alarms. The only defense we had was a security officer who was patrolling certain areas. And when he left to a certain area, the person saw the opportunity and took the head. The other problem we had was it wasn't properly secured. And we learned from that mistake that the mounts, the security of the physical security of the object is very important, whether it's a mount or a vitrine. It has to be very physically tight, as we would call it. So we're happy to get this back. Opportunists from the outside. Can we have a next slide, please? Here's some ancient, early Christian jewelry, basically, and two Celtic coins on the top. The next two items are dress fasteners, early Christian, BC. The pins were also gold, early Christian, and the little brooch to the right there was bronze. It was a bronze brooch. The four pieces up on top were recovered. The two pins were never recovered because they were melted down. We found out that they were melted down. And the brooch, the person we later arrested for the theft said he didn't take it, and we never found it. It may have fallen when he committed the crime. Somebody picked it up, but that brooch is still missing and it's still out there somewhere. What happened with this, it was 4:30 in the afternoon, 1981, another early theft for the museum. In a public gallery, again, no cameras. The vitrine was made out of plexi. It wasn't alarmed. It was very physically challenged, would you say? It wasn't up to standards. A custodial was working in the area and noticed there was a jar. He called security and we, investigated, and we saw that the pieces were missing. Here again, we made the decision to go to the media, go to the press. We went to the different media outlets. It was put in print, and it was also on the news shows. About a week later, we had a hotline set up. We got a call from an individual who said he had a friend who was a Celtic coin collector. And I think that was the key to the case, because all the other objects are sort of foreign to people. They wouldn't really know what they were. They would know they're some type of jewelry. But the Celtic coins are very valuable and they're very collectible. And this individual was a collector. And he knew exactly where they were. We contacted him. He said they were at a coin dealer in Nassau, Long Island, and Nassau County. We went to the coin dealer with the police department. In the early days, here again, it was a hit or miss. We would either go to the police department or the FBI. Here we went to the New York City Police Department. Today, because it's a federal crime to steal from a museum, we would have notified the FBI. They have a great art squad, the art crime team, and there, I think, 4 or 5 agents right in New York that investigate art theft. So we would have called them as we went on in the future. But so we went with the New York City Police. The coin wholesaler said he was going to send them to England, London, to be auctioned off. And we were glad to get them, because once they went to London, it, it could have been like our brooch. We would not have seen them, I wouldn't think. But we got the coins. He said he got them from a coin dealer in Deer Park, Long Island. We went out to Deer Park, Long Island. We had to get the Suffolk County Police now to get involved. And the coin dealer was up front, and he said, yeah, a gentleman came in and he sold me the coins plus the two dress fasteners, things that are on top, and the pins. So he took out a box and the dress fasteners were in there, but he said he had melted down the pins. And that's one of the concerns about intrinsic pieces. A lot of times the thieves would rather have the metal value than the artistic value. So you really have to follow the chain and get on it right away before that happens. So we were able to save the two and the coins. We asked the coin dealer who exactly was the individual. Do you have his name? And he says, oh yeah, I have records, secondhand records, that when someone comes in, you have to have an ID and you have to sign in a book. And so we went over to the book, and there was the name Charles Kelly. And we were all dumbfounded. Charles Kelly was the custodian who reported the crime at the Met. So it was an internal situation. He was having trouble with a divorce. He needed money. He saw this opportunity. He had some knowledge of the alarm system, because it was a very crude case, and he was able to shimmy it and take the pieces out. He got worried that nobody was going to find the theft. That's why he reported it. He was arrested, terminated from the museum, and he was, I believe, given a probation period. As we go through these theft cases, the penalties aren't as harsh as you would think they would be. It all changed when the federal system got involved, and they were a little more stringent with the penalties. Next slide, please. Excuse me. This is a Gobelin tapestry, French, 17th century. I show one on the screen, but there was a pair that was stolen. They're about 9 by 7 feet in length and height, about 23 pounds each, so they're very heavy. They were on loan at the NYU Fine Arts Institute at 78th Street. They went on loan in 1978. In 1982, the administrator called the security department saying that somebody had broken into the institute and stole these two tapestries. We went over to start an investigation, and right off the bat, we had a real strong feeling that they were stolen by a professional team. They had to go through an alleyway between the French Cultural Center and the Institute. They broke open some glass French windows, went in, ripped them right off the wall, and went out. We assume it was 5 a.m. in the morning, because an alarm did go off. They got to Fifth Avenue, probably put them in a car, or most likely a van, and sped away. The response of the police and the alarm company was 35 minutes later. So these professional, and I've interviewed a lot of professional thieves, alarms don't really mean much to them, because they know they have between 5 and 10 minutes. In this instance, they not only had the time, but there were, here again, no cameras. It was 1982. There was really no, there was an alarm that went to um, an outside agency, which takes time to notify the police. So they knew what they were doing. Um, it was interesting. I had just come back from about 2 weeks with Scotland Yard, working on my dissertation, and working with them because they had this fantastic art squad with over 18 detectives, a computerized system. They had a lot of statistics that I went through. But what they did have is they had this computerized system with stolen art that they indexed. So my first thought was I got to get this case over to them. Pictures, photographs of the tapestries, and I called them. I went over and I said, "Listen, I need the index numbers on these, and we're gonna see what we could do here. We're gonna work with the FBI." So they put some index numbers on them. They put them in the computer, and it was beautiful. You know, it was in a system. It was in an international system because we surmised that these tapestries would leave the country. And we say that because thieves know exactly what they could steal and put in the illegal market. That's objects that aren't well identified. Oriental rugs or a big one, tapestries. Not many people know or question, you know, where these things come from. So what happens is I took my folder. We worked with the FBI for a while. They had some suspects, but it didn't pan out. We put the folder, you know, on the cold case drawer in my office. And 1994, the legal department gets a call from an individual in London, and the young administrative assistant calls down, and I get the call, and she said, "You know, Mr. Barelli, we have something here. It sounds like a crank call to me. Somebody's calling about a tapestry that was stolen from the Met, and he thinks he knows where it is in London, and we have no tapestries that were stolen." And I said, "Just pass the call down to me." She passed the call down. I started talking to him. I put him in touch with Scotland Yard, with Inspector Hill, who I knew. They met up. What had happened was this individual worked for the Francis Institute that cataloged all the tapestries throughout the world, and they were being offered this for sale by an Iranian rug merchant in the West End. When I did speak to the individual on the phone, he said, I researched this, and believe me, I know that these tapestries were at the Met at one time, or they were owned by the Met. So Scotland Yard, him together, I believe it was hours. Hill calls me back and says, "We got your tapestries. They're in our property room." We had to buy them back from the insurance company. They were valued at, I think, $200,000 a piece. The interesting thing about the case, and you never know who you're speaking to on the phone, that gentleman who identified the tapestries as theft, as being stolen, was Tom Campbell. Tom Campbell becomes a curator at the Met the next year, and 13 years later is the director of the Met. So it's quite a story. Here again, we were so happy to get them back. And I believe because they were torn from their mounts. Last I heard, they were still in conservation, so. But they'll be on view at sometime. Next slide. So this Egyptian ring, Ramses VI, you can see it's 1100 BC. An interesting thing, I never knew this, but the notification or the reason they know it's Ramses VI is because his name in hieroglyphic symbol is on the face of the signet ring. The 6 is a modern number that modern archaeologists and put on the ring. So there was never a Ramses VI back in 1100. He was called something else in hieroglyphics, Ramses. So what happens here? We get a call from a jewelry shop owner on Lexington Avenue, and he said, we have a ring that was stolen from the Met. And we didn't know anything about this ring, that it was stolen. We contacted he gave us a description. He gave us a session number too, the number that is painted on each piece of art by the department or the registrar's office that signifies the year it was brought into the collection and the department. So he got our attention. We contacted the curator. It would have been viewed in the new phase 2 at the time in 1981. It was open about a year, the new phase 2 galleries, right off the Temple of Dendur. We went to the galleries, and sure enough, it was missing. Long story short, we make a deal with this gentleman because he wants to buy it. He wants a reward, and he said, I want $80,000 for it. We said, well, we don't know if it's worth that much. My boss at the time, Alan Gore, negotiated with him, and we said, we'll give you $25,000 for it. So we made a rendezvous at the Aquavella Gallery. We had the police with us. We had police outside. We didn't know who we were dealing with. It could have been just a ripoff. They were going to rip us off. So we made the exchange with the police. I wasn't there, but another security manager, Ed Ryan, was there. Made the exchange of the ring and the money, and the police arrested him for extortion. He then gave up what he said he bought it from 2 kids for $5,000. With some good detective work and his description, the police arrested 2 individuals, 17 years old. We were able to interview them, and the story goes like this. They here, outside people, outside opportunists came into the museum, and they were really, hate to say this, but they were sharp kids because they saw a flaw in our system, our physical system of cases. If you back in 1981 went back to the phase 2 gallery case where this ring was, it was in a ring with large. It's the cases are still there. Large panes of glass doors that opened up, but when you closed them, there was a 1/4 inch gap in the door. Not only was there a 1/4 inch gap, but there was an 1.5 inch gap on the floor. So what these 2 individuals did, they came into the museum. We believe they came in a couple of times to look at this and scout it out. They came into the museum, went to the information desk, got a floor plan, went back to the gallery. One of the kids had a hanger in his wire hanger in his jacket. Another was a lookout. Here again, there were no alarms, no cameras. All we had was a guard patrolling, and he was not distracted, but he kept an eye. He had a lookout, keeping an eye on the guard. And the other kid went in, put the floor plan under the 1.5-inch gap underneath, took the hanger, put it right in the 1/4-inch gap, knocked the ring off, and it fell right onto the floor plan. If you look at the ring on the top right, you can see a dent. I think it's on the top. Yeah, that's still there. When it fell, it dented the ring, and the curators decided not to touch it, and so it has a battle scar from the theft. So now he pulls the floor plan out, takes the ring, and as we were interviewing him, he said, I was afraid that I was going to be searched, so I put the ring in my mouth and I walked out the door. He walked out the door. Here again, spur of the moment, not professional, because they didn't know what to do with it. So they walked up 80-something Street, and the first jewelry shop they saw on Lexington Avenue, they went in and they sold it to this jeweler. The kids were arrested, but they were juveniles, so I believe they were just given probation. And I believe the jeweler and his accomplice, he had a friend that was with him. He also got probation. But here again, early days of 1981, and not only the alarms and the cameras, but the physical construction of the case was flawed. And this was a landmark case for us, because what happened after this and before this, security was involved, but we were involved at the end of a construction program or design program. This really changed how the museum did business, and I think how a lot of museums did business. Security was involved right at the beginning of any planning stages, and we learned a lot from this case, and you'll never see anything like that again. So we're happy to get it back, and we learned something from this. Next slide. Now, I'm coming up now to 2013, all right, 2013. This is a Islamic sprinkler. And I say 2013 because we're running by 2005. We're running pretty much on all cylinders. We have sophisticated alarm systems, sophisticated camera systems with video networking systems that we could store forever. That we could go back and investigate. And I'll say this right now, I believe the camera systems that are in place today, not only are great investigative tools, but they are deterrents. People see them, people know that they're there. It's helped vandalism drop dramatically and theft drop dramatically. We didn't have this alarm that was on a shelf in the Damascus room, but there was a really good physical wire mount that secured this, so we felt very confident. What happened was an individual reaches over, and we have it on video, to try to take the whole thing, but he bends it, and it is not. He's not able to take it. So we see this as we go back to the video after a technician said that this had happened. what had also happened, this individual comes back 20 minutes later, and that little top cameo, it was a coral cameo carved with the stopper. He takes that and snaps it off, looks at it, puts it in his pocket. So now we don't have a vandalism, we have a theft. Long story short, we track this individual through the museum, we identify him with his group, which was his wife and 2 kids. We track them to the sale shop. We get a credit card number, not a number, a name. And it wasn't a credit card, it was a credit card with money on it. We didn't have an address, so now we have to go to the FBI. They go through immigration, they put the name on the credit card into the immigration system. We give them the picture of the 4 of them that we got out of the checkbox, because we have a lot more cameras than just in the area that this happened. And he, so now what happens is the FBI brings them up. They have names. They issued warrants for the guy, and they were from Mexico. He comes in. That I should have said that the credit card was a Mexican credit card. That's why we thought it was international. That's why they went to the immigration system. They went to the Southern District. It's a federal crime. They got an arrest warrant. The next time this individual comes through the customs, he was arrested. He was convicted. He was fined a lot of money, house arrest, and I think what the judge had said, and she's not going to get involved. It was a felony, so he's going to have a hard time coming into the country again. But she said that's the immigration setup. But we got the stopper back, and conservation repaired everything. But we would have been in the same place we were in 1981 if we didn't have our systems in place. So it could have been something more valuable, more serious. Next slide. I'm running a little late, so why don't I'll just tell you real quickly. We recovered these weren't stolen from the Met. They were Catherine the Great's pistols. We got a call from the property section of the NYPD. A new inspector was there. He was going through the inventory, saw these, and said maybe somebody at the Met could look at these. Brings them up. Helmut Nickel, our curator, looked at them. He saw Adolf Greck's name on it. He knew they were Catherine Great's pistols right away. The New York City Police Department gave them, or not gave them, but they anonymously lent them to the museum. This 72, they were confiscated in a drug raid. They stayed at the property section till 1982. 1982, they wound up in the Met as anonymous donor. And I believe it was 85, they are given to the Met by the city of New York. And they have to go through our acquisition committee. And one of the trustees said at the viewing, they're my pistols. They were my father's pistols. And with that, he supplies a police report. The report shows they were stolen. He then donates them to the Met, and they're back in the arms and armor. I just wanted to show you this because these artifacts have that are stolen just lay places until the right person sees them and tells us or says that we have to look into this, or these are stolen. Next slide. I'm just going to wrap up this. We did a lot of other things in the security department, and this is one of the great exhibitions we had. We were able to control it. We had no problems. People enjoyed it. I had a team of 600 security personnel, great management staff, and it was a great leading them. And I just want to close with this, that I hope someday we'll be back looking at exhibitions like this. And so thank you for listening, and thank you, Sharon.
And thank you, John, for a very, very interesting talk. And not surprisingly, we have quite a few questions, but I'm going to start off myself, following up with a couple of the points that you mentioned. First, hold on, I have to do this in a way that that people can see. So you mentioned the Celtic coins and the jewelry, and I just wanted to show a cover and the publicity that went with it. And I wanted to show a cover from a 1980 publication of IFARS. This was an early publication of our Stolen Art Alert, which at that time was a standalone publication, but now is incorporated into every issue of the IFAR Journal. And in it, we not only publicized this theft, but we had a dialogue with your predecessor, Alan Gore, right, about the theft and the weakness in the particular vitrine from which these works were stolen. And he went on in great detail about some of the security flaws, if you will, of vitrines at the time, which I think we all will assume no longer exist today. And then I also wanted to show a second slide, hold on, apropos of something else that you discussed in your talk, which is the comment that museums had a tradition of not reporting thefts, and that when you had the theft of the Greek herm, of the marble head from the herm, that which was, and I think this is really quite interesting in terms of the Met, how few thefts you had at the Met, not how many, but how few, and that one was the first one in the approximately 110-year history of the Met. That IFAR, before it launched its stolen art database, it did a 3-year feasibility study of art theft in museums and galleries in the US and Canada. And there were many, we published that at the time, there were many interesting statistics that had come out. So this is just before the theft of the marble head from the herb. And of the museums that had reported a theft in the prior 5 years, almost 25% of them had never reported the theft outside the museum, even to the police. That's a very large number. To me, even more shockingly, when I was reading those numbers, 6.4% of those who responded to our questionnaire hadn't reported the theft even to their boards of directors. So that will show you how much things have changed in these interim years regarding reporting of theft. They felt, as you said, that it would be a lot of negatives, bad publicity, security breaches, and everything else, and it wouldn't be any positives from it. We felt it would be efficacious because it would help long and short term in deterring art theft, making objects unmarketable and more easily findable. So those are my only 2 slides that I'm going to be showing, but I thought they were interesting in context of what you're talking about. I'm curious why the museum at that moment decided to publicize the theft, and I assume it has done so for all subsequent thefts.
Well, there was a discussion of how do you get it back? How do you recover something like that? And there was a discussion on that end, and then there was the embarrassing, I don't know if we want to, but it, not all thefts, like the, you want to use the media to help the investigation. That's basically what we decided. And there are certain investigations where you're going to hold off on that until, like the ring. We didn't have to notify the press until the end, which they were, and the media. But, and also the tapestry was not, didn't have a lot of media because we didn't feel it needed it. So, but you want to, I think it's changed. And I think the Met was at the front of it back then. And from there, it just progressed. And it's a very logical thing to do now, depending on the investigation.
So I'm going to just ask a couple of quick questions of my own and then open it because we have quite a few that have been written in. In light of the recent theft of the early Van Gogh from the small Dutch museum in Laren in the Netherlands during this pandemic when the museum was closed, can you speak a little bit to museum theft, not just the Met, but museum security, I guess I should say, for museums that have now had to be closed for long periods of time?
Yeah, just a quick thing about that Van Gogh. You see that or hear that from time to time at European museums. That the smaller museums too, they don't have the budgets to have a staff on site, a command center, guards patrolling. So they as the Fine Arts Institute did, they have an alarm to the police station. And these people know that they have so much time to break in and smash and grab and that type of thing. And that's what that probably was. The pandemic and security, I'll just say this, I would think most museums, when the museum closes to the public, they go on a night security system, more alarms, patrolling, everything's locked down. And that's what most museums are probably doing now during the pandemic. The daytime security is treated just like the nighttime security, very tight.
In your book, you spoke about guns and the fact that early on, the security guards carried guns, then they didn't. What is the story now, and what is the attitude about the carrying of weapons?
In the early days, they carried guns. They had a pistol team, basically, and some of the entrance guards carried weapons. I don't know how well trained they were. Today, the Met has special officers that blue uniforms, usually at the entrances. They have power of arrest. They're police type of people, and they carry weapons. The philosophy at the Met is that they're there for deterrent value. That's it, to show strength, basically. And we never had to use it, knock on wood. But it's a uniform deterrent situation.
And someone asked this question, so I will phrase it a little bit differently. You showed only most of the slides you showed were from early on, 79, 80, a little after, except for the Islamic perfume picture. Is that because, which was 2013, is that because there really haven't been thefts at the Met in all these later years, or did you just choose to focus on these?
No, I think what I've showed you is that they happened because we had vulnerabilities. We had opportunists that saw our vulnerabilities, and over the 25 years, 30 years, we really have buttoned that up, not only physically but technology, and our guards are better trained. there's just so much we did. I have to tell you, those 600 people that we have, and I always love to mention this, come from 90 different countries and speak 40 different languages.
Well, that's
So
impressive.
you talk about diversity, that the Mets security department has it, believe me.
Okay, and speak to some of the types of equipment you have now, from motion detectors to other things, and that relates to a question that was submitted to us. I obviously you don't want to go give out state secrets, but it relates to a couple of questions we had about whether there are minimum security measures that insurance companies require or that you just have, but clearly there are alarm systems, silent and other, and motion detectors. Can you just speak to that just a bit?
Yeah, basically what the systems do is you don't want to be too sophisticated. You want to make sure the systems are simple enough so people could respond and get notified right away. Whether it's a motion, whether it's a camera, whether it's anything out in the field, the key is the person in the command center able to see that alarm or what's going on, so then they can get a quick response. Sophistication is good, but you don't want to over sophisticate yourself, because then it's not going to work. You want to simplify it. And I would think the biggest improvement in security has been the video networking capability of recording live color pictures of events going on. And the cameras are just fantastic. I think they're even going to get better. They're small, they're big. We could, design anything we want in certain areas. But things like not social, but facial recognition, chips put on, objects. There'll be other things that are going to be developed as we go on, and security will evolve even more.
Someone asked a question, we addressed it regarding the tapestries, but is there some guesstimate you have of the percentage of stolen works from the Met that have ended up overseas?
Well, that was the only one.
Really interesting.
We haven't had any other thefts. I covered them all.
Really?
We had some serious damages with the Atom. We had some vandalism, but they're thefts. There was one other that I covered in the book, was a partisan, a blade of a partisan that was stolen that we never recovered. So that's still out there somewhere. But no, there's very few. But it gives you a good picture of the type of people who are doing this stuff.
Yes, and also how rare the theft is. I think that's quite significant, considering the Met has millions of visitors every single year, and you do hear more often in Europe. And many thefts are insider thefts as well, as you already addressed with Mr. Kelly, who was one of
the other thing is, I interviewed a lot of professional thieves in England, and they stay away from museums because they don't want to get caught stealing from a museum, because they'll probably get more time in jail if they do, and it's harder to sell. So the real pros aren't going to do that with the museums. And I know somebody's going to mention the Garden Museum.
Yeah, someone did, as a matter of fact. That you weren't involved. So what's your theory of it?
They weren't pros. I'll tell you what you could, what your readers could do. There's a book, Master Thieves, by Stephen Kurkjian, and he wrote a book, and I believe what what his take on it was exactly, I think, may have happened. The gangs up in Boston would steal art and leave it as collateral. So when someone was in prison, they would use the art to get them out. Miles Connor did it. In his book, there's a wise guy who was in prison. His bodyguard, chauffeur. This author surmises, and I think he may be on the right track. Set up this theft ring to steal the things at the objects at the garden. He had mentioned to some of his cronies that he had taken care of, he's hidden the art. And guess what happens to him? He gets shot and he's dead. Now, the other guy he was getting out of prison for is also dead. So, you know, a 17th century painting, I mean, they're so fragile. I mean, I don't know where they hid them, but maybe someday, hopefully, they'll pop up.
Hope springs eternal. There are so many examples. It's now 30 years since the Gardner Museum theft, but
Yeah.
hope springs eternal. We certainly know of many cases after 20, 25, even
Yeah.
more years. So they certainly are unsaleable. That's for sure.
Exactly.
And let's do just one other maybe question here, and then I want to wrap up because we're going actually a little bit over. Regarding the perfume holder, you explained how the thief was caught. Can you say how those methods, because that was a fairly recent theft, 2013, how those methods wouldn't have been possible in your early years of the Met security?
Yeah, well, I had mentioned that the investigation would have stopped because we didn't have any video to monitor and track this person down. So, you know, we could have had a problem with that.
Okay, so we actually have a few more questions, not many, because we actually incorporated some of the questions into the talk. I apologize to the people whose questions we couldn't get to, but John has very graciously agreed to answer them in writing, and we'll get back to you with your questions sometime soon, not tonight, but sometime very soon. I want to sort of stop here so we don't keep people any longer than we have to. And thank John, our very gracious speaker, for a really interesting talk. I want to remind you that at some point we will post the information from this video, from this program on our website. So we will try to let you know about that. And I want to thank AXXL for its help in supporting our program. And meanwhile, you can view some of our prior recordings on the IFAR website, including the Raphael program and other, not all, but other previous videos that we've posted. So I'm going to end it here, just 5 minutes late. I wanted to get in a few extra questions. This was a terrific talk. We'll answer the rest of the questions another time. Go to our website, check the other videos. Thank you all for participating. And most importantly, stay well. Okay? I thank you all very, very, very much. Bye, and thank John, truly.
Thank you.